of this push for America to try to bring these two parties, we essentially, Ethiopia had at that point decided it was no longer going to participate in the EEBC meetings. Eritrea was still participating through its American lawyer. Ethiopia wasn't through its American lawyer. So what we did was we said, look, let's bring these two parties back to the EEBC. We got Ethiopia back to the EEBC. Frankly, we were working with General Fulford as our sort of envoy. He had several communications with the American Eritrean lawyer, i.e. an American who was representing Eritrea, and the American who was representing Ethiopia. There was a misunderstanding. I don't know what it was. I really don't know what it was. What we were trying to do in that mediation was to give technology, essentially use satellite imagery that would look at that border, which if you look at that border, you'll see that there are many communities that are divided by it, and say, how will you two leaders or you two countries address this issue? Are you going to address it by open borders? How are you going to address the issue of the division of this line, which is true in all border demarcations? But they got mixed up. I don't know the details of it, and Eritrea then withdrew from the EEBC. So that was a problem. At that point, we withdrew. Now, just to bring this to a close, because I have two more questions from you. There's a book by Bolton, the U.S. ambassador to the UN. And in that book, I was quite surprised because Bolton said, I was surprised when I heard it in the news. Bolton said that I had agreed to shut down UNME, which is true, to shut down UNME. But then I reversed myself and decided to reopen the Eritrea-Ethiopia Boundary Commission issues. When I read the book, I said, now, why did he say that? That's simply not true. What I think he was saying is that we had agreed as in America that our approach would be to shut down UNME. But that when Kofi Annan pushed us to deal with the EEBC, he felt that I was extending its life and now getting in the middle of this conflict. I think that's how I interpret what he was saying. He may not have known the communication between Kofi Annan and Secretary Rice and President Bush for why we actually got in the middle of the EEBC issues. In the final analysis, we're right back where we were when we started this, which is that we're looking to shut down the UNME because Eritrea has kicked UNME out of the country. Ethiopia has not allowed the demarcation to go forward, and we're at an impasse. And once again, the United States does not want to be in the middle of this. And the notion that, and I think that President Isaias really believes the notion that America could force Ethiopia. We can't even force Eritrea to do anything.
Why?
And so, because we don't have the leverage over Eritrea. On state, we don't. I mean, you know, there are ways to leverage, but we're not going to use that means. On the state sponsor of terrorism, you're quite right that Eritrea has been fighting Islamic jihadists and ideologically has no agreement with this. But I think Eritrea is so focused on bringing down Melis that he is aligned with many different forces. And it is, I maintain to this day, and I know through the intelligence that I see every day, that Eritrea is absolutely supporting, assisting, financing, materially assisting Al-Shabaab. I'm not the only one to say it. Pretty much everybody in the region knows it. The UN knows it. Everybody knows it. We haven't designated Eritrea as a state sponsor of terror. Because we keep saying to Eritrea, you're not ideologically, you're not ideologically in bed with these jihadists. It's not your tradition. We've now designated them as not fully cooperating. Before we even took that step, before I even said publicly that we might designate them, I went to President Isaias' strongest supporters, the people who collect money for him in this country and other places, and I gave them a warning. And I said, look, we know what you're doing, stop it, or we're going to have to escalate, because by law, we have to escalate. Now, bombings are going off in Ethiopia. Some of these groups are very probably financed, definitely, not probably, I'm just trying to be nice, are financed by Eritrea.
That's not true.
Come on.
That's
That's right. This is the third one. On elections, we do treat each election as its own election. We have a broad policy, but each election is its own election in its own local context, which is one of the things I said. In Kenya, two things about that result. You say that Odinga won. We say that it was too close to call. We say that there was cheating on both sides. We've done our numbers. When you talk to Odinga publicly, he says one thing. When you talk to him privately, he'll say a little bit of a different number. His numbers always have him winning by exactly the same amount as Kibaki's number has him winning. Too close to call. What's more important in that situation is that you had two leaders supported by constituencies who took the political conflict, the physical violence, the killing of the Kikuyus and the displacement of the Kikuyus in the Kalenjin areas, the killing of Luos and Kalenjins in the slums of Nairobi, the move to get the Mungiki to counter-kill in the Kalenjin areas. It was very clear, and it was not just Jendayi Fraser. It was Jendayi Fraser, it was Kofi Annan, it was David Miliband, and it was many others. Pretty much the entire international community said that you need neither one of these parties can govern by themselves. They cannot govern by themselves. Kibaki could not do what he tried to do, which was to establish a government and to establish facts on the ground and govern without Odinga. And Odinga could not do what he was trying to do, which is continue to create a sense of crisis, at the same time control the violence, which he could not control, and govern without the other half of Kenya. So in that situation, the most practical outcome was a grand coalition between these two parties and their allies, and it is their allies. And I think Kofi and others agreed with that outcome. In Zimbabwe, the issue of a coalition government has come up. It was first raised by members in the region, and the United States took no position on that. In my private conversations with the leaders in Africa, I was quite open to the idea of a coalition. What I said, which was not fully accurately reported, was that Sengarai won the first round. And I even said, by what margin of error. We knew that he won the first round in terms of he got more votes than Mugabe. That was uncontestable. Whether he won outright depended on the margin of error for the numbers that we had. And we were using the Zimbabwe Electoral Support Network numbers. And if it was 0.2 to 0.6%, if it was 0.4, he won outright. If it was 0.2, he did not win outright. And so I think that our statements were accurate that Sengarai won the first round. We never claimed that Sengarai won outright, and we never ruled out that there could be a...
What about the Ethiopian?
You forgot the foreign ministers meeting with the Eritrean jihadist movement.
I don't know about that.
Actually, what I'd like to
You should.
Okay, check it out on the internet.
we have any questions from students from the University of Washington. This is a University of Washington event as well. So if we have one here in the front.